The days are longer, the calendar is filling up, and I want to feel as good as this beautiful summer weather. That's why I've been loving Groons. It's one daily pack of gummies that covers my greens, vitamins, and minerals, and even has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber. So I don't need to juggle a complicated wellness routine on top of everything else. They taste amazing. They're easy to toss in my bag on the go. Plus, they're vegan, gluten free, and HSA, FSA eligible for reimbursement. Save up to 52% off with promo code podcast at gruns.co. That's code podcast at gruns.co.
This is a really awkward way to start the Russo Suhan show. Michael, your mom told me on Twitter this morning that she loves me.
Oh, nice. That's very sweet of her. I hope you wrote her back.
I did. Of course I did, because I love her too.
Nice. Well, that's very cool. Yeah, that is an awkward way.
I'm trying to make you as uncomfortable as possible, and it worked.
Yeah. No, it definitely worked. She's very prolific on Twitter. My brother and I recently told her to maybe chillax on there.
How'd that go?
I don't know. I'll have to double check and see if she's...
You muted her, didn't you?
No, I definitely haven't muted her. But sometimes she gets a little outspoken. Kind of like a lot of the Twitter trolls. Yeah.
She's not a troll. She's a good-hearted person.
No. She's very good on Twitter, I guess. So
I guess. I love how you qualify everything you say about Barbara. I guess. Yeah. Okay. Have I made you uncomfortable enough?
Yeah, definitely.
Good. Okay, that's my favorite way to start the show. This is the Russo Hockey Show, part of the TalkNorth.com podcast network. Please subscribe to this show or the network at your favorite podcast app. That's the best way to listen. Please follow us on Twitter at TalkNorthPod to see all the shows as they're released. Check out our new shows like Meatgistics, which is about grilling, Gopher Hole, which is self-explanatory, and a lot of new outdoor content. Thanks to our producer, Brandon Morton. And if you'd like to advertise with this show and reach a lot of very dedicated listeners, you can reach me at jsouhan@talknorth.com. All right, so we have a proposed start update for the NHL. Tell me what you know about that.
Yeah, I mean, and what that tells you is that, so July 10th is the date that the NHL is proposing to start training camp. It still has to be approved by the players, and that will come in one swoop. There will be, when phase 3, which is training camp, is approved, that's also approving phase 4, which is the bubble cities, the protocols, the games, and everything that's going to be in these bubbles that these players are going to be in. And what that tells you is that if July 10th is the date that training camp is going to be planned for, you really have to backtrack 14 days and then probably 2 or 3 days before that to have that vote by the NHL players and the NHL Players Association to approve the NHL and NHLPA negotiated plans for return to play. And the reason why is because a lot of players that are going to have to cross the border from Canada, from Europe, they're going to have to quarantine. And in Europe, it could be as much as 14 days if you're coming back and quarantining. So you have to give these guys the ability to come back into our country and then have that quarantine and then training camp. So what that tells me is at some point late next week or early the following week, they're going to have everything negotiated between the NHL and the NHL Players Association, and then this is going to have to go to a vote to the players. And again, I'm telling you, it's not a slam dunk. These players are concerned about a lot of things, and from what I'm hearing from multiple sources is that the biggest stickler, which the players are concerned about, is not seeing their families for potentially up to 2.5 months if you have a qualifying round and you go to the Stanley Cup final. And I'm being told that right now, at the very beginning, that families will definitely not be part of the bubble. Originally, they were or at one point in this process, they started talking about, all right, maybe they could have families be a part of it, but I'm being told that they're going to have a really protected bubble to make sure that these guys are healthy and that they could pull this tournament off of 24 teams coming up.
Interesting. And it's also interesting that you're telling me this about the NHL players at a time when NBA players are starting to speak out and WNBA players speaking out and saying, hey, not sure I love the whole living in a bubble concept. Is this really going to work?
Yeah. You know what? I will say I'm doing a story next week. I'm doing two stories on hubs. One, I'm doing sort of breaking down what the front runners are right now of the hub cities, of the 10 finalists. And that'll come in tomorrow or Monday's Athletic or this weekend. And then I'm doing a really expansive story on what hockey will be like on the ice in the locker room and what it will take to pull off the hub city format and this protective bubble. And I can tell you that I have him on a podcast next Tuesday as well. But I've talked to Bill Maurice, one of the head honchos over at Mayo. And if you read the stuff the insights that he provides, it will give at least fans a lot of optimism that this will easily be able to be pulled off as long as multiple things happen. One is a really good pre-quarantine once they get to the hub cities, which means making sure that these guys are in their bubble and not doing anything and pre-quarantining, because if you're exposed to COVID, it really takes what he says about 3 to 5 days to even test positive for it. Then once you've test negative. Now I sound like President Trump. So test negative for it. Then the deal is that you want to have a really protected bubble and make sure that only the people that really need to be there are there. And then once you do that, he really thinks that games can, and then as long as you have also frequent testing, that games can continue to be played on the ice. What he also told me is that he thinks it's very unlikely that, even though we always talk about that hockey is a sport that's physical and you sweat on each other and you spit on each other and you're bumping into each other and all that type of stuff, the reality is that you have more of a likely scenario of getting sick in the locker room or in that hotel than on the ice playing the game. That the environmental safety will be absolutely paramount in these arenas to make sure they're clean, sanitized, and all that stuff. And he brought up a great point. He brought up the doctor I talked to is a huge Wild fan, by the way, and he brought up about the mumps and the multiple occasions that the Wild have had the mumps because multiple teams rolled through the same arena. What we think ground zero was Anaheim. A lot of teams that went through there at the same time at the first bout of it. St. Louis Blues and Minnesota Wild especially got this virus. And at one point it took out, basically, as he said, the entire Wild blue line, and Jonas Brodin was out like a couple of weeks, if you remember, and he had a better memory of that than me. And so the deal is that he says, as long as everything's clean and these players are smart in the locker room and being clean and wearing masks and being smart, that they think that it's easily pulled off. But again, that does, even if the NHL and the NHLPA are able to convince the players that, look, you are going to be completely healthy. There's very little risk for a healthy hockey player anyway of getting severely sick from COVID-19. There's still the two big issues are being stuck in this bubble for 2.5 months if you go far. And the other thing is escrow. It's a huge damage to the sport, the business of hockey, with not having fans in the building and the rest of the regular season being essentially canceled. And all this is doing is taking a huge hit of escrow, maybe 35%, and shaving off 7 or 8 percentage points. And these players want to know exactly what their paychecks are going to look like in the next couple of years. They don't want to be hit with 28 or 30% or 35% escrow off, in one fell swoop next season. And they shouldn't have to, right? I mean, look, the reality is that the players have a 50-50 share and they have a lot of the risk here. And if the damage of the sport revenue wise is taking it down, the players share in that. But you can't ask players to play a full hockey season next year. That's probably going to be very condensed. And then you're going to also take, with their tax brackets and escrow and union dues and, Social Security and everything that goes into this, essentially take 80-85% of their salaries. So I really do genuinely believe that is going to have to be really spelled out for them. And that's one bigger reason why they continue to talk about the next collective bargaining agreement also, because that could be very much part of this.
Right. Hey, tell me about Profile by Sanford. How's that going for you?
It's going really well, down 22 pounds since May 1st,
Wow.
crossed that threshold today. It's really cool. Profile by Sanford, they give you a smart scale as part of your package when you sign up. And the scale not only, does everything from your weight to, because your hydration levels, your body mass index, your body fat, all that stuff. And then it sends it to an app that also goes to your coach each week. So, there, she sees everything. And when I say she, Danette is my coach. I see her on a weekly basis. I'll see her on Friday, virtually over Zoom. They do have in-person appointments as well. And what's really cool about the coach is that you don't have to introduce. She knows everything about you. You go over your challenges for the week, and then she gives you all these steps, and you're off on your way. And as I've mentioned before, their food is absolutely delicious. I've got constant support, and what's really makes me confident about Profile by Sanford is I'm never hungry, and it's been developed by doctors, so it just takes the guesswork out of weight loss. So there's 6 Twin Cities locations, and so for more information, go to profileplan.com and tell them Russo sent you. Again, that's profileplan.com, and what's been really cool, Jim, and I'm sure you've seen the tweets, is since we've started this on this network, I've gotten 3 or 4 people sending me pictures of the food that they got, or letting me know
Cool.
that they started Profile by Sanford, and I just highly, highly recommend it.
That's great. And by the way, with COVID and everything else, our network has lost advertisers just like everybody else, because we have advertisers who aren't in business right now. So this is an opportunity. If you want to advertise on this show, this is the most popular show on the network. Our fan base is very passionate about listening to Michael and coming out to our live shows. Be a good time for you to advertise with us, and we would appreciate it. So let's go to Twitter questions from Patrick John. Are there any implications with the delay or current circumstances and Seattle's expansion?
Well, not in terms of implications. Yes, 100%. There will not be an expansion draft next June because there will be hockey being played next June if all goes well. That means no second wave, no more shutdown of sports. That means the 2021 season starting in December or January. It's going to be impossible to have a draft and an expansion draft in June. Everything's going to be pushed back. So, as I just told somebody on Twitter, what I can genuinely see here is, let's say they get hockey done this summer. And right now, July 10th means that really you're going to be starting around August 1st, August 5th hockey. There's going to be a 5-game qualifying round that takes about a week and a half, 5 games in probably 8 days. And then you're going to go into the playoffs. Playoffs are usually at least 2 months. So you are talking, say you start the playoffs August 15th. You're talking about awarding the Stanley Cup October 15th. Then what that means is that you need to have a truncated offseason where you have an entry, you have a draft, and you have free agency and trades and all that. And then you got to give these guys, especially if you went to the Stanley Cup final, a bit of an offseason. And then you need your normal training camp and your start. So we are absolutely looking at an early January start next season. And what that means is if you are going to play a 2021 season starting in January, and you're not going to compact it to a scenario that's going to put these players at absolute risk by playing every day, you're going to be, again, awarding the Stanley Cup next summer in July or August, most likely. And what that will do is it would be almost, I don't even know how it'd be possible. Maybe some smarter math people can come up with that. But if you have that pattern starting next year, and then the year after and the year after, when do you even get back to a normal September to June hockey calendar? Probably never. So this could be the very start, Jim, of an annual winter start of the NHL. And in a lot of ways, it makes a lot of sense because football's ending. You have no baseball, no baseball at that time. So it's kind of, and who knows if the NBA is going to be on a similar thing. So all of a sudden now it's kind of like the landscape is yours if you're the NHL. So I really think this is the beginning of a new NHL season as we know it. And I'm going to have to get used to traveling in the wintertime to cold weather destinations for my vacations or go to the Southern Hemisphere.
Well, it is all
That's
about
how I think.
It is all about your personal travel. That's all.
I just cannot wait to get on an airplane again. I'm not even kidding.
It's so funny you say that. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed not flying, not dealing with airports. And, I've had I've had periodic back trouble ever since my mid-20s, and sometimes it lays me flat out. Sometimes it's just constant chronic pain. Not flying, not traveling, my back feels great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and as I mentioned, I think on the last podcast, I've not had even an inkling of an illness since early March or probably February. And I think I know it's because human beings are just disgusting creatures. And I've been away from them. Not getting on planes, not going into hotel rooms. I mean, not being in jam-packed press boxes and arenas. It just shows you how you get sick, right? So I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek, but the reality, scientifically, I think that like clockwork, every 2 months I get sick. It's just it's during hockey season with the travel I do and all that stuff. I think you just get ill, and I have not even had the sniffles since early March. Knock on wood. And I think it kind of makes me nervous that everybody's getting back to their normal lives here and almost forgetting, whether like there are people out there that think we overreacted to COVID, that it was a big scam. Whatever your feelings is on it, the reality is that we have all sacrificed immensely in the last 4 months. We've destroyed the economy. In terms of, although even technically the economy is back in terms of stock and 401ks and all that stuff.
Stock is not the economy. Stock is what rich people do with their money.
I mean, we've destroyed livelihoods, right? People are still getting laid off. We just saw that at our entity. People are taking pay cuts. People are filing unemployment left and right. And now we have the world just forgetting that we just went through this absolute inconvenience for 4 months, and they're going to nightclubs and beaches and jam-packed casinos, and they're just acting like idiots and not being careful or smart and wearing masks. And if we have another second wave of this and the governments follow suit with what they just did, we're all screwed. So, so I do
just
think
wear
that
a mask, wash your hands, be safe.
Whether you believe this or not, whether you think the risks or not, whether you think the virus is impotent or all, like I still think that we should all try to act a little bit responsibly here to make sure that we don't, because again, we don't control whether or not the government shuts everything down again. If there's a second wave, they're going to make that decision. I think that we all should be pretty freaking smarter here, and so that means if you go and enjoy your life, but just do it smart. Still try to social distance. Still try to wear a mask. Things like that. So
it's such a simple thing.
We probably just lost all our listeners. Our loyal listeners that don't agree with me just said, "All right, screw it, I'm done."
Hey, thanks.
Stick to sports, Russo. That's going to be what they're saying. Stick to hockey. Don't have an opinion on anything else. Only I can,
Thanks to Tony Hoagland, Hoaglund, your State Farm agent in Champlin. Again, he handles my insurance and Michael's insurance.
Every team knows that the two-point play can be a winning move. That's why State Farm agent Tony Hoagland and his team are here to help you go for two by combining your home and auto insurance. It's a great call that saves you time and money. So go for the win and score savings by combining your home and auto. It's just another way we're here to help life go right. Call State Farm agent Tony Hoagland at 763-421-4900 or online at champlininsurance.com.
All right, back to the Twitter questions of all the people who've now left the program. From
this
Justin
is probably
Caesar
our last
Panson.
podcast.
Yeah, well, that's all right. It was fun. It was
250 shows, and I just destroyed the network.
It was a good run. What exactly is the goalie situation right now? If they decide to go with Stalock Kakkonen next year, what happens to Dubnyk and his contract?
Yes. Good question. I mean, first of all, Dubnyk and his contract, there's just no way to figure that yet. We don't even know when the offseason is. We don't know anything. So we don't know what buyout rules are going to be and all that stuff coming up. But in terms of what Dean Evison said, is it's going to be a level playing field in training camp. It's going to be at that point 4.5 months, and then going into whatever the season is going to be 5 months before Alex Stalock or Devin Dubnyk or Capo Kakkonen were on the ice, and it's going to be a tryout. And whoever's the sharpest, just because Alex Stalock was unbelievable and Devin Dubnyk wasn't as good, in March does not mean that Devin Dubnyk's going to not come back and be lights out, and like he often, by the way, is at the start of the season. And now Alex Stalock is not going to be good, or that Capo Kakkonen's going to be good. So, I think I've said a couple times that if I were Billy Guerin, I would at least consider really giving Capo Kakkonen a look to see what you have going into next year. But that would be an awfully big chore to throw him in against the Vancouver Canucks or a playoff run as well. a young rookie like that. So I really do think it's an absolute tryout. And if Devin Dubnyk is the best goalie in training camp, he's going to probably get the opening night nod against the Vancouver Canucks. And that's just a fact. So in terms of the goalie situation, and none of us have ever seen this before. And so to just think that come July 10th, that Devin Dubnyk doesn't deserve to be the number one of this team if Alex Daylock doesn't come back and doesn't regain his exact form is just outlandishly, inaccurate. Devin Dubnyk's going to be right on par with the other two.
From Family Dining, do you think the Wild should paint flip-flops on their skates for the summer of 2020 NHL season? I say yes.
Yeah, sure.
From Ben Gorman, what happens to the stats that players accumulate in the play-in round since it's technically not regular season or considered by NHL postseason at this time? Do you think all the stats just disappear?
Yeah, I mean, that really is. I mean, it's not a huge concern, but that is something that the NHL and the NHLPA want to figure out because all players want those stats. These stats should technically count towards something in terms of arbitration or salary negotiations or things like that. I mean, if you score 7 goals against the Vancouver Canucks, I think that you want that listed somewhere. But it's technically not the playoffs, and the regular season has ended, so it would definitely not go in the regular season stats. But then, I mean, just think of. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but just to code a new column somewhere, I think is also a little problematic on 50,000 sites. So they're trying to figure that out right now. My guess is that it will definitely be a separate thing. I don't think it would count in playoff stats because technically the Minnesota Wild and the Vancouver Canucks are not in the playoffs yet. The Pittsburgh Penguins and the Montreal Canadiens and the New York Rangers and the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames, none of these teams are in the playoffs. So this is the qualifying round is to make the playoffs, so I don't think you could have it in playoff stats. So there would either have to disappear into oblivion or there would have to be a separate category.
From Reed, have there been talks between the NHLPA and the NHL yet about that guy I'm sure he's talking about, Mr. Kaprizov?
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about that stuff. And again, I've talked to sources very, very close to Kaprizov. I've talked to PA sources. They think the league has no grounds to stand on here, that it is a collective bargained right that if the 2019-20 season's going on, that guys on reserve lists that were signed before the trade deadline, so not college free agents, but people like Kirill Kaprizov, Romanov, people like that they should be allowed to play this summer. The league is going to fight for this. We'll see how big of a fight they put up, and we'll see if the PA ever relents. Like if the NHL comes in and says, "Hey, we're going to make escrow 14-15% next year, but Kirill Kaprizov can't play," let me just promise you the NHLPA will end the fight. So that's what it's going to be, a give and take. And if the NHL really wants to fight for some reason, Kirill Kaprizov and these guys not being allowed to play, if they want to continue that fight with the NHLPA, they are going to have to give the NHLPA a really big bone to say, all right, we'll listen to you on this one thing. And so that's why the PA is really confident that they'll be able to win this fight. So we'll see.
From East Coast Wild fan, can AHL players play in other leagues like Europe if next season is scrapped without it impacting their AHL NHL contract?
That stuff is so hard to figure out right now. I mean, again, one can assume that in many cases, if the NHL and the AHL are not going on, that a lot of the European leagues are not going on as well. Sweden says they're going to start on time. We don't know about some of the other leagues. But there's also import rules in all these leagues. I mean, it would not be fair to European players that solely play in the Swedish Elite League if all of a sudden a ton of North Americans came over there and took their jobs. So it is a huge, huge issue. And that question just reminded me that 2 weeks ago I had a Zoom, just me and Scott Housen, the new commissioner of the AHL, and Dave Andrews, the outgoing commissioner of the AHL, for a couple big stories that I still haven't written because I've been working on other stuff. So I will have to write that, and that is going to be that question will be a part of that story.
From Minnesota Wild affiliates and prospects, since Belpedio and Manel require waivers next year, does that make it more likely that at least one defenseman is traded?
I mean, theoretically, yeah, absolutely. But again, do you have to trade one of your defensemen? Are you trading Jonas Arberigine or Matt Dumba just because you're scared of losing Brennan Manel or Louis Belpedio? No. So, right. It's only if it makes sense. And again,
Right.
I'm sure Bill Guerin is in the same camp as I am. It is hard to even grasp what next season is going to be like until you get what your transition rules are going to be going into next season and when next offseason is.
From Tim McHugh, how is Dubnik's wife doing these days? I can't imagine he would want to play in a hub city unless she made a full recovery.
Yeah, I mean, she's doing very well, and
Good.
and on a road to recovery, the medical procedure that she had in January seems to be helping in a lot of ways. So she's doing well, but what you just said is an absolute issue. And this is the type of thing that the NHL is going to have to figure out with these players. None of them want to leave their families for 2.5, 3 months. I mean, just think of what the psyche is going to be if you're a team that goes to the conference final and the Stanley Cup final, and you're in Vegas and you're not allowed to leave your hotel, and you're looking out on the strip and you're seeing thousands of people living their daily lives because they're back to their life, but the NHL is still going to keep them in a protected bubble. Let me just tell you, the bubble is not ending until the end of the playoffs. So if all of a sudden society opens up, the NHL is not going to risk the health of these players by saying, okay, you can come out. So, you're seeing pool parties going on. You're seeing everybody going out and enjoying themselves. Zach Parise, if the Wild are fortunately in the conference finals, is not going to be able to just walk down to the Wynn or walk down to the Planet Hollywood. He's going to be in whatever bubble they have. And so there's a psyche issue here. And so, not having your family there is a huge deal to these players. Players also want to know answers like, what if my wife is giving birth and I leave for the birth of my child? Can I not get back in the bubble? What if my mom has a medical emergency? What if my wife is sick, as you just mentioned? These are things that are valid concerns for these players. And I don't think that the players should be ripped for asking those questions.
Right.
Not that you're ripping them, but I do see a lot of people like, oh, they make millions of dollars, just suck it up and live in a hotel for 2.5, 3 months. Like, that's just not that's not what these guys sign up for. That's not what they don't go on 3-month road trips. And I get that this is a totally different situation, but maybe at the beginning it's fine. But just again, imagine the psyche of these guys a month and a half, 2 months into being trapped in your hotel and not being able to go anywhere. And that's why the league is trying to do it in a place like Vegas, that you could take one hotel and say, that's yours. You got 8 restaurants. You got the ability to go on a quarantine golf excursion. You got a movie theater, whatever. They want to make their life and their environment as good as possible. That's why LA's in it. Let's be honest. And again, this is part of my story. I'm giving you away. But the reason why the LA market that shocked us all is part of this is because the league knows you could put all 12 teams in the LA Live, Marriott, and the Ritz-Carlton, and they would own and operate LA Live. And they would honestly, I mean, this is told to me by sources, they would have that. It's an outdoor cordoned off area that essentially society would not be able to get to these restaurants, but these players would have fair game to go wherever they want. And that's what they're trying to do, is try to make life as good as possible. And that's why when you start to look at it like that, you could figure out right away what markets on this list are not viable. Like Minnesota is probably not viable in that scenario. Even without what's gone on in in the Twin Cities here in the last couple of weeks with the rioting and the looting and the protests and the potential defunding of the police department and all this stuff. Even without that, you can't put 12 teams at the St. Paul Hotel and say don't leave, right? The players would jump out windows. But even Edmonton's got the incredible JW Marriott, but it's got 300 rooms. So what of, and again, there's 50 people in a traveling party. There are 12 teams. So right away that tells you that you have 600 rooms that you need right there, plus all the people from the NHL to make this go on. Plus there's going to be people part of the hotels and arenas that have to be in the bubble too. So you're talking maybe 700 hotel rooms. So what 400 have to go to the crappy Delta or the Westin, which are very average hotels. So that's why I'm telling you, I think Vancouver is actually a front runner because they got magnificent hotels there. You could take over great restaurants, things like that. So, you can go through these lists and try to figure this stuff out. And that's what I'm going to be doing in this new hub story that I'm working on with Joe Smith, our Tampa writer.
Cool. From RJ Stelges, I hope I get your name right. Jack Eichel is getting unhappy in Buffalo. Hard to see the situation improving soon enough to satisfy him. The Pegulas are a business mess. Were his recent comments the first salvo in forcing a trade despite his contract? Sabres could get a haul for him. Could the Wild provide one?
First of all, boo-hoo. Okay, he signed the contract knowing that he was in Buffalo and playing for that franchise that's been a disaster for a long time. So, and because he signed that contract, the Pegulas, who have $1 gazillion, don't need to worry if he's unhappy or not. They'll fire Jason Botterill and do a ton of other stuff before they go and trade Jack Eichel. So, yes, do the Wild have a haul? I don't know exactly what Buffalo would want. It would obviously cost one of your top two defensemen at a minimum, probably one of your top forwards, and probably a first-round pick, and then even maybe more. So we're talking one of the great young centers in the NHL, and so I don't think it's anywhere even close to being a point right now that they would trade Jack Eichel unless the haul was an absolute non-brainer and no-brainer. And I got to tell you, I cannot imagine that if Jack Eichel is going to get traded, that they would allow Jason Botterill to be that guy to do it. So we're talking way off in the distance. I think Botterill would be fired well before the franchise player is just traded from the Buffalo Sabres.
Right. From Will Tomlinson.
Obviously, just an opinion, and he could be traded tomorrow. Who knows?
No, it's good insight, though. Will asks, any idea of potential scheduling games through the day? Or are we looking at 2-3 games a day when it resumes?
Yeah, great question. Is that Will Tomlinson?
Yes.
Every time I do this podcast, I play with the puck that he gave me, the Nottingham puck that he gave me at one of the games last year. I can't remember where. Oh, yeah, I do. Madison Square Garden. He's from England, Jim.
I remember.
Yeah, great
I
question.
remember that.
I've talked to the league about this, and they would these games would be 2-3 days away. The 2-3 games a day at a minimum. There would be hours between games as well because they have to clean the arenas. They're going to have to do a bunch of things to set up for the next game. And the other thing is that it could be like a tennis tournament where if all of a sudden a game goes to 6 sets, you have a bunch of players like in college or high schools that are sitting in the locker room suited up waiting for that game to end. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be the interesting thing is it's going to be regular overtime rules. So if the Minnesota Wild are in the playoffs and playing the Colorado Avalanche and it goes to overtime, there could be 3-4 overtimes, and whoever's next, there's going to be delays. And so, I don't think people at home would care about that because it would be a classic game, but I'm sure the players in the locker room, like their children waiting for the game to end, would be a little crazy.
Orange slices. Just have them eat orange slices. Yeah. It's going to be fine. From North Dakota guy living in Texas, are the players in Europe making their way back now when we're going back to live shows? I have no idea about live shows at this point. When will the Europeans start making their way over here?
When phase 3 is totally approved. None of these guys are coming back. But this is why I said with the 14-day quarantine that all these players are going to have to go through, and July 10th being training camp, if it's approved, that means that all the talks to finalize what the bubble will look like, what the hub city, every detail of what return to play is going to be needed to be negotiated by 14 days in advance of July 10th, and then probably 3 or 4 days for these guys to come back to set up their plans to get back into North America, both Canada and the U.S. And again, they can come back even if the borders are closed. So we're talking like late next week or early the following week that these are going to all have to be negotiated, everything from the hub cities to the protocols to testing to bubble cities to Kirill Kaprizov. And then the players are going to have to approve it or have a vote to approve it or say, no, we're not playing. And then once it's approved, that's when these guys are going to come back. But Kevin Fiala and Jonas Brodin and Zuccarello and Eriksson Ek and Rask and all these guys are overseas, even guys in Canada right now like Spurgeon and Soucy and Marcus Foligno and heck, Wes Walls is British Columbia. All these guys are not going to come back until it is a guarantee, 100% approved that there is going to be a return to play.
Tyler, thanks us for doing the shows. Well, we like doing the shows. We also have built, a business here. We're trying to get through this period. We appreciate everyone who listens, everybody who supports our sponsors. A reminder, Twill and Dining Galleria has been supporting us for a long time, so check them out if you're looking for clothes in this difficult time. From Chris on Twitter, what are the potential effects of delaying the next NHL season that will trickle down to other leagues, and how long will the NHL be dealing with the delayed 2020-21 season?
I'm sorry, say that again. I was reading
I think he's asking what the effects of delaying the next NHL season will trickle down to other leagues.
Usually the NHL and the AHL follow suit, and I think that's a big concern by a lot of minor league players is when are they going to get to play again? If that's what you're asking, and that could lead to players saying, "I'm going to Europe" or something like that. Now, if you're under an NHL contract, that will have to be worked out. I mean, is that the question?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah.
But if that's not the question, send us another question next week and we'll get to it. I think that's what he was referring to. Barbara Taven says, how does it feel to be a year older?
Oh, yeah. Tomorrow's my birthday.
Oh, congratulations.
Excited about it.
29 again?
Yep. I would love to be 29.
Please just sign Kaprizov already on Twitter asks, if restrictions start to loosen later down the road, could later rounds in the playoffs be played at the team's regular buildings with fans?
Yes, I mean, that would be a likelihood. Still probably not with fans in the building, but that is something that they would love to do in the conference finals or the finals, or my guess is they take it to one city like Vegas.
Right. From our old friend Bill, the lack of certainty with hockey revenue this year, next year will have a huge impact on free agency and roster building. How does that impact extending guys like Brodin? League-wide, do you see big name free agents taking one-year deals, hoping more money is in the system in future years?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. And you're right. I mean, until we know a salary cap and what the damage is to the sport, we're not going to know. Billy Guerin can't answer these questions. Trust me.
Right. From Carson, does the NHL have plans or need to upgrade ice rinks to handle summer weather?
It's a great question when you're in places like Vegas. Although humidity is the biggest issue when it comes to rinks, and Vegas is obviously very, very dry air. Like I don't think you could do this tournament in Florida or Tampa. I really don't. I could tell you, Aaron Portzline at the Athletic is working on that very story right now.
From Robert Duffy, with NHL teams being heavily dependent on attendance revenue, are there any teams that are in real trouble financially? Could you see any teams moving?
No, I don't see that, but I mean, this is not good. And as I said to somebody on Twitter, this is why next season is going to be pushed to January. It's like, the people, and I ranted about this a podcast or two ago, the people that keep on saying, just get rid of the summer hockey and start in September. It is not happening. Like, I don't understand why this is still a thing. Like one, how many times this has to be said, but use your collective brains here on this one. Like, you've just blown a hole through $2 billion worth of business if you don't if you don't finish this season. And even if you finish the season, we're talking like $500 million back. Okay. You're not going to start next season without fans in the building. The goal by pushing next season back is, one, you hope you can at least have some fans, if not all the fans in the building. But two, at least at a minimum, you get to the really last part of not being allowed to have fans in the building. So that's the goal by pushing next season back. It's not because they're just so adamant, we got to play this summer. It's because they know they can't start in September or October because they refuse to without fans. And that is a huge part for the NHL. They don't have the TV money that all these other leagues have. And they need fans in the building. They need people buying corporate sponsorships. They need concessions and merchandise and all that being sold.
From Peter, if a player tests positive, what might be the protocol?
Yeah, I mean, again, the governments control everything, but the one really fascinating part of my story that I do next week, where I talk to Bill and Maurice, is that he really feels that the treatments are going to be so good in 6 to 8 weeks that it's going to be very, very easy to treat these guys, and they don't need to be out for 2 weeks and things like that. The other thing that he says is, again, percentage wise, the chances of a highly healthy professional athlete getting severely sick by COVID-19 is still very, very, very slim. So, even if you test positive, it might not be anything more than a common cold. You're still going to have to obviously get them out of there. But it's going to be the one thing the league has been extremely adamant on is that if somebody tests positive, they're not shutting down. The goal would be to get them out.
From Nathan D. Zacharias, if there are no fans in the arenas, do you think we'll see new camera angles on the ice from television broadcasts?
Cool. Joe Smith's working on that story right now, and I think that that's one thing that the all these TV that the league is trying to do with television is that there are going to be different angles, blue line cameras, lower level cameras that we've never seen before, and there's going to be all sorts of interactive things to try to make product at home with no fans in the building, fans to enjoy watching the game. Every game might look different. Again, there might be apps where you can do stuff interactively while watching the game. In a lot of ways, it's funny because obviously, selfishly, I'm trying to figure out, hey, is there a chance that I might be in the building? But in a lot of ways, it might be a better show to be at home to see exactly what's going on. Because again, if we're in the building, can you justify the expense if we've got no access to the players? So it might be cool to kind of get the atmosphere of what it's like to watch hockey in an empty arena. And again, there's tons of things that you see when you're in a press box that you cannot see on TV. But if then after the game, I'm getting the same Zoom that other reporters are getting at home, even though I'm in the arena, can you justify the expense of sending a bunch of reporters to these arenas for months on end? Yep. You saw the NBA announce today that or not announced, there was a memo that was discovered by somebody, I can't remember which outlet reported it, saying that there are going to be certain tiers of reporters that are going to be allowed in the bubble, but if they leave, they're done. I will say this, the other thing that this doctor tells me is that he really thinks that if you can, he brought up that in a lot of hospitals, they've pretty much ended with good PPE, the ability of a patient getting a healthcare worker sick. That has not happened in a lot of weeks, several weeks at a lot of hospitals. I'm trying to be generic and not talk specifics here. And so he thinks if that's going on in a hospital, why can't it happen with media? And so he really thinks that these players would be completely healthy if a reporter was wearing a mask, social distancing, and things like that. But I don't think the NHL's got to protect the players for this to go on. And so, I think the last thing that they're going to do, even though the NHL absolutely needs coverage, especially if they're going head to head with the NBA and Major League Baseball at that time, and an NFL potentially, NFL and Major League Baseball potentially. MLB, obviously, we know what's going on there. He really thinks that it's important for the hockey media to be there, but we'll see what the NHL decides.
One more Twitter question. Thanks again to our producer, Brandon Morton, and our sponsors, Profile by Sanford and Tony Hoagland, your State Farm agent. From Alec, if the virus doesn't come back, when is the earliest fans can return?
That one, none of us knows. I mean, that could be when a vaccine comes out. The good news is that a lot of these doctors say that the vaccine now can be out by wintertime, early next year. The Dr. Maurice that I talked to said that there are companies like Merck and he gave me another one that started with an M. Do you know what that is? Merck and I could find my story. But that right now they have vaccine trials that they're testing and things like that. So maybe it comes sooner, but it really could be a vaccine. Whether or not there's a vaccine, the leagues will not really make that decision. It's going to be the governments in concert with the Department of Health for each market.
Hey, good stuff, Michael. Very comprehensive. We appreciate it. Thanks again to everyone who listens. And check out the other shows at the network, talknorth.com. We'll talk to you next week.
Pretty little city built on a hillside. Music in the bars and fire in the sky. We went to the beach and it was covered in ice. And I used to call it home. So much coming out, there's nothing going in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win. Oh, but the world won't forgive a winner.
Stick to sports, Russo. Stick to hockey.